Yeah, man. Hi, Afra. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us for this conversation. We've been trying to get onto you and find the right
Sure,
time with you for
sure,
a little
sure.
while. Thanks for being here.
Margaret, I appreciate the invitation to join you and your viewers on this important platform, Future Law. It's almost like a little bit of a painful thing to imagine in the future. We still have to live with law, but some of us have to enjoy, some of us have to enjoy life with law. You know, I have
Well, how can
tortured
we?
relationship with law and with lawyers, huh?
But Afra, how can we? You see, a jump into the philosophy right away. How can we
Never.
work together in a
Yes,
society without law? Law,
absolutely.
to me, the law is the way we negotiate power in society, our
Of course,
relationship with each other, how we distribute and negotiate power. So
of course,
I
of
know that was
course.
a jokey response, but you know,
No, but
I always come out for the law.
of course, but at the end of the day, there are differences between those of us who are practitioners, like, and those of us who are participants and who look on, like myself. So I think that I'm very pleased that you've started this platform. I've enjoyed a few of your broadcasts. I think this discussion is extremely timely, and I thank you for the invitation. So I just want to say, as we start, that my work is available at afraraymond.net. So all my work is curated in one place.
Yeah,
all
man.
my articles, newspapers, articles, TV shows, radio shows, including online sessions like this, they're all
Yes.
recorded in one place, afraraymond.net. So people are free to enjoy or participate as they see fit.
Yeah, the Thinking Man's blog. And what we'll do under this
Yes.
conversation, we'll have a link to
Yes.
your
Thank
platform, because it's an incredible platform. Even as I
Thank you.
research, I use it.
Thank you.
Because you tend to do some preliminary level research there all the time on issues that arise. And so we can go and get source documents.
It's
you know.
important, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Afra, a lot of our viewers may not know you. I know you very
Yes.
well from Trinidad and Tobago. You are recognized as a thought leader on the issues of public governance, anti-corruption, public procurement, and those
Yes.
issues. Your background is in land surveying,
Yeah.
but yet you're such a multidisciplinary thinker. I think we will put the links to who you are underneath, but if you wanted to just
Sure.
introduce yourself
Sure.
shortly.
Sure. Sure. Let me just say to you, Margaret, if I could just, because I'm using this as a conversation,
Yeah.
and I want to chime with you the way that we do in our tradition of call and response.
Yeah,
So I want to chime with you in relation to some of the important you brought out in some of your powerful broadcasts recently. So you were speaking about information age, its challenges, its legislation, its regulation, its lack of regulation. And it has a bearing on all of this, because we have a situation, and all of this, I mean the COVID, oblique corruption, oblique public governance, utterly important conversation we need to have, because the entire future of civilization, not just biologically, you and I as biological beings, but the future of civilization, its shape and its direction is being bargained, sometimes in accordance with laws, and sometimes, as you said so poignantly in your broadcast information, where there are no laws. So the big issues are being negotiated. So I just want to put something out here as a chime with you, so we could both understand a kind of a territory where we can start off as a nice part to discuss and setting the table.
Love it.
I could remember reading in about May, June of 2017. It was in The Economist, it was in Forbes, it was in Bloomberg, which are reputable world-class magazines of financial reportage. In fact, the most valuable asset on the planet was no longer oil and gas. It was information, it was data. So in fact, the entire discourse that people like yourself and myself have as procurement practitioners or philosophers or campaigners, we now need to seriously change gears. This is why I was delighted with that broadcast with that information. And in fact, understand that information, which is intangible, because the whole come down to the whole question of valuation of intangible assets, which is intangible, have an immense value, so much so that they've now outstripped oil and gas as at the mid of 2017, 3 years ago. The second point is that the position most of us aspire to, constitutionally and philosophically, for the future of our society. And I'm being broad and I'm being adventurous. People who are looking on can criticize me. You can criticize me. I'm saying
Why
what
not?
I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I'm saying what we aim for is a degree, and there are different words in different parts of the world, but a degree of republicanism, where we're all equal. We no longer have earls and princes and lords and knights and kings and queens and so forth, okay? We're looking for a degree of republicanism and equality and equity, more importantly, going forward. So in fact, that is the desired arrangement across broad parts of the planet. Okay? And then thirdly, and this is where this trifecta now makes up a beautiful territory for discussion. Thirdly, we have the fact that where the world's valuable information resources, the deposits, so to speak, it's banking language, the deposits, those deposits are in the accounts of people who are not held to any law. They own the company themselves, them and their family own the company. So I have called it an information monarchy in a period of republicanism. That's the global challenge we have, you know. And I identified that in July of 2017, the information monarchy on the planet that we're witnessing.
Listen, you're speaking Anya's language.
Would you?
Whether it's Facebook, Google, and we talked about FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. FANG, I spoke about it in Guyana, 3rd of May 2018, yeah. So this is
that Facebook,
Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. FANG.
Netflix and Google. Nice.
Anagram they use in the IT world, the IT people, FANG. They call it FANG. And Anya, you would know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. This is something that we actually said. Absolutely. We actually said that these are the new regulators, sort of, because they possess so much information that, and there's no engagement whatsoever. So they're pretty much the ones that are creating and curating the rules that we have to abide to as individuals. And the problem is that, one, because we have these monarchs of the information and they decide on how this information is going to reach us, a huge problem is how do we access those information? And then once we have it, how do we even channel it? How do we even deal with that information then? Because there's so much information coming in that there's a lot of noise in space. And somebody actually needs to be, just like you put it, be a depository of it so that we can make sense, so that we can create collaborative decision-making processes, so that we can actually be participating in those decision-making processes, like creating the rules, creating new types of society and governance
yes,
systems.
Absolutely, beautiful governance. So let me put something on the table again that I want to share, because I see this as an exercise in sharing. We are comrades together. We may not agree every single thing, but we are comrades in this thing together. It's a discussion of ideologies, a discussion of philosophies, a discussion of the future based on the past and based on unpleasant things in the present. Let me put a few things on the table for the viewers and for posterity. Some books I would recommend, and I may be old school to recommend books, but bear with me. Glenn Greenwald, No Place to Hide. Glenn Greenwald, No Place to Hide. The Panama Papers by Obermeyer and Obermeyer. Absolutely first class. In terms of the Panama Papers need to be discussed as part of this discourse we're having here. Okay? And of course, the whole question, the book that is a free book, it's available online. It's the Federal Crimes Investigation Commission, FCIC, established by Obama to examine the federal financial collapse in 08 and 09. That report is free because of the American liberalism with this sort of information. Just like the Kennedy assassination report and 9/11, they're all free. You can buy them in any bookstore for $13.95. But that book raises the pregnant question. You see, if the imperialist powers through the IT technology can get into everybody's phone and see everybody's message, and nobody's private, which is the thesis of No Place to Hide. How the heck did we get this financial crisis in 08? And that sort of intersection hasn't been interrogated. So if they knew everything, which is really what Greenwald is saying, which is on the work of Snowden, how did we blunder into this situation where in fact ordinary people's pockets were picked?
But who is they? Who is the they that Greenwald was referring to? That
the NSA and the GCHQ and so on, the intelligence apparatus, and he also fingered a number of, which is what I started off with, a number of the private information giants. Yes, it wasn't. He wasn't pointing his spotlight solely at state agencies.
But that's what I'm saying, because if you're talking about how did we get into this situation,
yes,
is all the information in one place? And I wouldn't say that it is, right? So yes, we have states collecting data, and then we have banks collecting data. Or, you know, what kind of collaboration is taking place? That whole thing is being negotiated right now. We saw that with the recent debacle with, you know, the corruption issues with our data, interfering with elections and all of that.
Yes,
interfering with the elections. What's the name?
I understand.
Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
We saw it with Cambridge
Analytica,
Analytica, the state trying to negotiate the arrangement of data and who has the data, how that data is used with Zuckerberg and Facebook. So
maybe not only the negotiation, it's also about the abuse. I mean, it's okay to collect the data as long as we actually use it for the interest of our society. Every single individual actually needs to be part of it and gets the benefit out of it. But what we saw with Panama Papers, what we're seeing with Cambridge Analytica is that the power is being collected and then abused for someone's interest. And that puts us in a different power dynamic that is not really in flux with what our single individual interest should be, or how they should be presented and how values should be safeguarded.
And raises the question, shouldn't public data collected by FANG and by NSA be a public good? Because there's a lot of positiveness, that positivity, that comes from collecting this data in this aggregate way. It's a lot. We can learn so much about ourselves, and you saw we call it system empathy, right? We can gain so much system empathy by having all of these data points over time analyzed about different cultures, different societies, and all that sort of thing. And so if we recognize data like that, then we need to start the conversation around whether that kind of data should be considered a public good. And if so, what are the regulations around which we protect this data as a public good and not allow FANG to be commercializing our data in the way that they do without our participation?
Sure. Let me share a little vignette with you all. I don't want us to get. I mean, I could talk
we ain't talk about COVID yet.
I know I can talk about this information thing for a week, but let me just give a little example of how I would call it a creeping data dictatorship. This creep is settling in the midst of a democracy. A creeping data dictatorship. Let me show you something. When you have your phone, you have an option on the phone to activate your location or not. So if you're using Waze to go to an unfamiliar place, you activate it and you drive down there and you turn left and you turn right and you make your way there and fine. And of course, we all think we can turn it off. 2 years ago, so we're sitting here now in May of 2020 having this conversation. In January of 2019, I received a chilling message from Google. I almost never activate my location unless I'm using Waze. And because I'm a surveyor, I know the whole of my country very well. I very seldom need to use Waze. They wrote me in the second week of January of 2019 to say, hello, I'm on Gmail. Hello, Afra Raymond. As part of our annual refining our files, we've actually collected all of your locations for the last 12 months.
I remember that. Oh,
yeah. And regardless of whether your location is on or off, we have all the locations of where you were with your phone. And if you touch this button, you can see it. And let me tell you something that's frightening. They have every...
They see where you went, Afra. They see where you went.
Margaret. Listen, but Anya, you know what I'm talking about, right? The email. It's actually scary. So what they're now telling you is that, in fact, before you thought you had a choice, that thing is switched on all the time in your phone. And they are pulling this vast amount of data all around the planet. And they actually construct a map. If you went somewhere 22 times, if you went somewhere twice, when you used to go somewhere in the morning, you could search it, you know.
Wow.
Where did you go after midnight? You could give it everything, you know. Amazing and frightening. Where you travel abroad, everything. So,
Afra, you're revealing so much to us right now, and I think that that's only a fraction of all the data that they have. Yeah, I mean,
what they're doing. That's
what else? What else is out there that they have on us? I do believe that they can form like a digital twin of myself, knowing more about me than I actually do right now. If you collect all the information that all these technical giants actually have about me, you probably have a very good picture about not only me as in where I am positioned right now, but all the history, how I got here. That's even more relevant, because then if you obtain that data, you can predict my behavior in the future. And then there you go, the Cambridge Analytica all over. I mean, you can not only predict what I'm going to do in the future, you can predict how I want to vote, who I'm going to be representing, or who's going to be representing me. That's, I mean, the question that I have for you is, how much do you actually believe we have, like how strong the democracy is right now? Knowing how much data we have, knowing how people are manipulating the data that we have, are we still living in a democratic system, or is that gone, like long forgotten?
That's a real profound one there, Anya. Let me think about that for a little bit. You see, as I said in Guyana in May of 2018, I was speaking at World Press Freedom Day. And I made some startling statements, and I made this statement, and in fact, I was delighted when Donald Trump was elected. I was delighted. I actually jumped to my feet and yelled. I was delighted when Britain voted for Brexit. Because you see, we got to get to the philosophy of the thing. If we have to have a meaningful engagement with each other as comrades. Let me say to you that growing up as a Black person in the third world, with my sensibilities, one of the things we encounter thousands of times in our own society, it's not about white society, our own society, we encounter it thousands of times, is you would discuss an issue, whether it's education or health or the police or crime or fitness, and you would eventually get a shallow part of the water where most people in the room would declare that if this was, and if some foreign places named France or Washington or London, this would not have happened or that would not have happened, and so on, okay? That's the general experience growing up in the global South.
Yeah,
the black and brown parts of the world, okay? That's
right.
a common experience. I never agreed with that because I grew up a certain way. I never ever agreed with that. But I have to say that was a common experience.
Yeah, man, for sure.
And I have had so many fights that I've lost because everybody in the room was against me on these points. And therefore I was delighted when Britain voted for Brexit in June of 2016. And America voted for Mr. Trump to be their president in November of 2016. Because at the end of the day, it proved to me, proof positive, that Britain and America could do stupidness too. That in fact, we could take this monkey, we had a chance to take this monkey off our back, this wretched monkey. Some of us call it colonialism, some call it racism, some call it imperialism, different name Babylon, different name is fate. And fling the monkey in the pick a patch and stand up straight and walk properly for the first possible time in our miserable history. And the message was being reinforced by Mr. Trump, President Trump, I'm sorry, sending 22 tweets every morning before breakfast. Yes, America will do stupidness too. Yes, England will do stupidness too.
Yeah. And you know what? This is why I love having conversations with you. It never goes the way we plan it to go. You stimulate all of these different themes and ideas and conversations. And now we're going into how much democracy we have and all of that. I want to bring it back. I want to bring it back though. Right?
Yes, Margaret, of course.
Bring it back to COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course,
because you're there in Trinidad and Tobago. I asked you to introduce yourself and we went into the philosophy of which is fine. So I think that was a great introduction. I think that was a great introduction of who Afra Raymond is, right?
Yes.
But I want to say, let's go back to COVID and your perspective in Trinidad and Tobago. Just a week or so ago, the Oxford University, which has developed this government COVID-19 response tracker, and has been looking at and comparing the stringency measures implemented by different countries all over the world. They actually issued a report. They call it a lockdown rollout report or something like that, just about a week and a half ago, a few years ago, where they were measuring the ability or the capability of a particular state to ease the lockdown. Because now we're May 9th, 2020. And countries all over the world are looking to start easing out of the lockdown. And on the top of that lockdown report, Trinidad and Tobago is little Trinidad and Tobago, 1.3 million people, too little, a twin island state in the southern, I mean, come on, has been ranked by the Oxford University as being the top country in the world with the readiness to ease this lockdown for its citizens. I want to hear your perspective on this, on the government's responses in COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago. You're a citizen there, you're a professional. What's your perspective on this? Reliability of data, everything, just,
Sure. Well, let me say, first of all, that the general response of the current administration, I think, has been quite good. Just to be quite clear, I try to be clear in my remarks to these sorts of pointed questions. I live in the middle of our capital city, Port of Spain, and I work in the middle of the capital city. And the level of activity, there was a rolling program towards a lockdown. And that rolling program involved, first of all, the closure of schools on the 13th of March. So all schools and universities were closed, 13th of March. Mm-hmm. And then after that, on Sunday, the 22nd of March, our borders were closed, which is what led to several situations that were widely reported. I'm not going to spend time going into all of that constitutional things about the right to travel and right of entry, and that's a whole complicated, that will take years. And then after that, we went into a situation, only essential businesses could remain open. And my own firm, we are chartered surveyors, our own firm couldn't remain open because we're
non-essential.
Although there's a certain firm that have obtained a legal advice to confirm that because they provide valuations for the bank, and the bank is essential, they are essential too.
Oh my gosh.
They remained open. So I'll leave it there. So this is part of the reason for us having an earlier exchange. I think it's irresponsible. It's not essential. And I run in the biggest firm, no, it's not essential. But people can get what they want to get on our letterhead and fine. Okay, that's that. So to come back to the general situation, just to give you a picture. If you travel, for example, my home overlooks one of the busiest streets in Port of Spain. There's almost no cars. 3 or 4 cars may go by in a day. Hardly get any pedestrian traffic. You have the odd, and one is accustomed as an urban dweller in these times of great income equality. You have the odd situation of homeless people and people who are employed at the lowest end of the scale, who have to walk to work, who have to sleep on the street, and who have to exist, to put it at a human level of humanity. So those people are still in evidence. By and large, business activity is shut down. All restaurants, all bars were shut down. As I said, the airports and the ports have been closed. The schools and universities have been closed. I would say 80% of firms are closed. Okay, I mean, this is just an average, but 80% of firms are closed. Opposite to my home is a university, Costa, that has been closed for the last 5 or 6 weeks. And thus far, we've had a situation in terms of the reported figures. I'm not a medical professional, so I can only make limited comments based on what's been reported. We have reported that there were, I think about at the peak, maybe 118 people had been tested positive for the thing, less than 150. And most of those people have sort of weathered it, yes, and been tested negative now and released to go home.
The last I checked was 8 deaths, but that was
yes, there were 8 deaths, but that figure of 8 deaths has been stable for about maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so there haven't been any more than 8 deaths reported. I'm very careful to use the word reported. Okay. I would also say, for the benefit of viewers who are not familiar with our situation, not to overcomplicate it, that Trinidad and Tobago is in such a place that if indeed the government of the day were, to use a pun, doctoring the figures, if indeed that were happening, I expect, because of the political schism in our society, that attempt to doctor the figures would be disclosed, because the opposition have a significant amount of support within the medical and scientific community.
Right.
So I don't think, my reading of it as an informed citizen, I don't think there's much doctoring going on. There's anything with doctoring going on is a minor thing. If doctoring had been going on to the point that it could embarrass the government, it would have already become a political football, and it hasn't. So that could tell you, that's my reading, that my barometer, my navigator's reading of the thing. Okay?
And, well, actually, that actually, raises to mind something that we found coming out of the research that we are doing at Future Law, because we have a collaborative of lawyers working all over the world now, collecting the policy responses for, and one of the areas we're looking at is rule of law and its relationship. So the strength of a rule of law in society and its relationship with the COVID-19 mortality rates. And we found a really interesting correlation. And I will put the link under this to where we have our data visualizations online at the public Tableau setting. And we found a really strong and remarkable correlation between countries that have a strong rule of law, an effective rule of law, or ranked so by the World Justice Index, with high mortality rates. So you see countries like UK and Belgium and Denmark that are ranked very high on the rule of law index, having a high mortality rate. And one of the, so we know this is not a causation, this is correlation. And so, but we found it interesting that that correlation existed. And one of the things you're hearing a lot of experts saying to explain this correlation is that in countries where there is less rule of law effectiveness, so less reliability of data and government statistics and public trust and all that, so those things down there, those on the left side of the graph, they're saying that we can't rely on the data coming out of those countries. That just came to me when you were talking about, can we rely on Trinidad and Tobago's figures? Because Trinidad and Tobago is lower down,
of course,
on that rule of law thing. I wish I could, I mean, I could share screen and show you what I'm talking about. Maybe I could, well, but yeah, so I'm just saying, we're talking to different experts about this correlation, and some are talking about the unreliability of data. Others are raising the point, very much like you, that, well, you raised the point, which was a different context, that because of the political situation and the kind of competition, political competition
in an election,
in Trinidad and Tobago, and Tobago, you would tend to think that if there was a smoking gun behind this data, it would have come out. Another point that another expert raised for us is that we could look at the excess death rates. Look at what were the pre-pandemic death rates in a country daily for a period of years. And if post-pandemic, there is no significant change in the death rate, which is a standard piece of data that's collected, then probably the low mortality COVID, we can take those as a fact, right? But it's just a fascinating thing that we are looking at, because there is an elephant in the room on this COVID thing, and I don't want to take up so much of this time, but it's just used. No, but this is,
I'm looking at the chart here that Anya just sent me.
Yeah, okay, good.
That option in the chat option in the anything is interesting. In fact, I wanted to show a story in there, Margaret, if I may, a COVID story from one of the countries in the perceived third world, a country I have some significant respect for, which is in the middle of your bundle of evidence, which is South Africa. Because there was a story from South Africa about 3 to 4 weeks ago that impressed the hell out of me.
Talk to me.
A minister in the cabinet, President Ramaphosa, Cyril Ramaphosa, a minister in the cabinet, all of the countries on lockdown went climbing. So she went to the house of an ex-minister to have a brunch on Sunday morning. A family brunch with about 10, 12 of them eating and drinking and having a nice time in private surroundings. The ex-minister, wanting to show the family having this good time on a Sunday, took pictures and put it on Twitter, and it became a thing. Because, of course, you weren't supposed to be leaving your home. The minister was, I'm trying to remember the phrase, she was suspended for 2 months from cabinet, relieved of a month's salary, publicly dressed down by the president, publicly apologized, and one of the parties in the coalition, which is the ANC, but the ANC is a coalition, it's not a party. One of the parties in the coalition has actually brought a private prosecution to put her in court because she broke the lockdown regulations. Now, I asked the question provocatively at the time, when will we see a president or a prime minister in one of our Caribbean countries take that action against a cabinet colleague who is out of line? And that is leadership. And I was very pleased to see it coming out of South Africa. It's something that I tweeted on and so on back about a month ago. But it's actually an example that although the rule of law, she never got arrested, they brought a private prosecution, and the president had enough sense of values to dress down the individual. And it was, I thought that was well done, and a way to reinforce the message, you know?
Yeah, because the elephant in the room on this thing with COVID is that to date, high-income countries seem to be disproportionately and negatively impacted by COVID than low-income countries. And this is, to me, something to unpack, because we are seeing, the experts are saying, well, maybe we just can't rely on the data in low-income countries. But there's a part of me that feels that the issue is more complex than that, and that there is more for us to understand, you know, about this. And so, yeah. And I think the experience that you're sharing about Trinidad and Tobago kind of puts that into focus. Yeah. There's my quote.
I do believe that there is something about it as well. We are seeing something similar in our country. Just had a huge case for, well, corruption. And one of the ministers.
By the way, Anya?
I'm based in Slovenia.
Slovenia, right.
It's a very small country in Europe. But yeah, we are now having a process of interpellation towards our minister, because he was part of these deals with private companies bringing the medical equipment to our country. Yes, and of course there was a lot of money and there was a lot of private deals made. And because he was pretty much ordering and, well, allowing these things to happen, now there is the whole process of interpellation. So this is just one of the processes that we could see. There's no way that somebody is going to be prosecuting them at the court because of the immunity that ministers are usually having. So there's different dynamics that we can observe in the politics. But I do agree. I mean, it's interesting, and it might actually become one of the research questions that we want to have as well, because corruption, the bigger the crisis become, the more corridors are open for the corruption to actually take place. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to be taking the advantage of the crisis that we're going through. That being said, if there's no inspection in place, or if there's no these type of processes in place, as previously said, the interpellation, or for example, prosecuting somebody at court, then we perhaps have to deal with what is the rule of law. The question, right? I mean, that is something that we would like to explore further on. What you're bringing to us, the case of South Africa, I think that this is something that we're going to observe not only in this country, might not only be the Caribbean countries, but it's going to be popping up everywhere.
I sent you the link on the chat to the article from South Africa. I just sent it to you.
Yeah, we saw it.
To all of us, yeah.
We saw it.
But it's really...
Now, you've been right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Margaret, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, just that you've been writing a bit on the government of Trinidad and Tobago's
recovery team,
but also before we get to the recovery team and a plan going forward, you've been, and this has been going on for a few years. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, I would say, tardiness in bringing to implementation the public procurement legislation that was so hard fought and hard won by the real huge movement between civil society and the government that took over a decade. Give us some sense of that and how important you think this public procurement regulation is in the context of government's COVID-19 response.
Well, public procurement regulation as designed in Trinidad and Tobago, the modern regulations we worked on, Margaret, you were part of that, myself and other colleagues and so on. That is a very modern, progressive and effective approach to this question. We have not gotten it fully implemented, and it's of utmost importance because it guarantees a number of things that we haven't had before. So for example, there's a level of transparency. Opportunities, contracting opportunities where public money is transacted have to be advertised before. Obviously, in the circumstances of an emergency or crisis, that those grounds would shift. Secondly, there's a question of transparency in terms of operational. So even if a contract is awarded under emergency provisions, that contract itself must be published. The award must be published. So the phenomena of the secret contract disappears along with the phenomena of the phantom contract, which is the first one of the phantom contract, the one that wasn't in the budget and popped up in March of a year. Wow. And you realize it's $1 billion. They must have been working on it for 3 years, but it wasn't mentioned for 3 years budget. So we have what I call a phantom project. Then we have the secret project, which is a project that they sign the contract, they cut the ribbon and they turn the sword and everything, but you can't get the contract because of freedom of information and this and that. And you know this stuff. A whole story to get a copy of a contract being paid for with your money, supposedly being done for your benefit. And lastly, we have the question that has bedeviled us for a while, which is the whole question of how do we inquire when things go wrong? And how we inquire when things go wrong in our society has traditionally been a spectacle called a public inquiry. In England, it'll be a royal commission. And in Trinidad and Tobago, it is a commission of inquiry.
Yes, we love those.
Multiple people, and you have a whole thing that goes on TV for months. Sometimes it's
sometimes over a year or 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years and things.
But you know, that was my specialization. I love that.
Of course, that's why I'm throwing a little peacock for you. But in reality, the new arrangement is one in which, and let us say it, I have kept very quiet about this. You would have realized this, Margaret. But the new arrangement is one in which commissions of inquiry, by and large, become a thing of the past. Because when a matter of public contracting rises to that level of concern, that a formal report is made, the authorities are the procurement regulator. The procurement regulator has to carry out an inquiry and report within 28 days, and that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, which is a huge improvement. It is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, although I would say this, a lot of people perceive commissions of inquiry as some sort of mechanism of enforcement of the law, and it is not. A commission of inquiry is about public education and access to what happened. And so, you know, they serve two different purposes. But yes, absolutely, the public regulator and that process quickens our ability to enforce and deal with stuff. One thing, just jumping off of what you said, I love what you said about phantom contract, secret contract. I would add corrupt contract, right?
Well, you see,
phantom secret, but then there are those that we know about, and they put it out to public tender. But when you unpack certain things underneath, you realize there was collusion, bid rigging. So I would add that as a contract.
So the 5 Fs. This is where you get the 5 Fs, Margaret.
Oh yes.
So the friends, family, and financiers find favor. 5 Fs, friends, family, and financiers find favor.
I love that when you first said it. And I think that was in your first TEDx, which is on TED. Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry, I can't remember. But
I follow your work. I follow your work.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah.
Thank you.
So right.
We have a stick in there, something with my network here.
That's probably my network. My network is bad. But I just want to final thing on that procurement thing, and thanks for that and all that you said.
Now, I'd like to make a little closing point. I gave an overview about the benefits of the law. Let me just tell you where we are, because listeners need to understand where we are. In Trinidad and Tobago, the law was passed. We established the office. The office has been staffed. A competent regulator has been installed and properly sworn in, and so on. What is happening is that old-fashioned saying, many a slip between cup and lip, or as we used to say in school, the tremendous trifle. The regulations that activate the whole arrangement, because the law itself is a framework legislation, and here you would understand it's a framework. It's not in every minuscule detail. The granular detail is contained in the regulations, the guidelines, and the handbooks.
Yes.
Those have been tied up, and there's been a bit of a back and forth. You would have seen some of that, Margaret, in the beginning of the year and the end of last year, with the Minister of Finance claiming to have cold feet with respect to the fact that the procurement law as drafted and the regulations as drafted gives control of public-private partnerships and government arrangements to the Office of Procurement Regulation.
Which was hard fought for.
Yes, the Minister of Finance didn't want it. So we had a big fight for the first 6 weeks of the year over those 2 points. So in fact,
the whole movement fought for those specific things.
Of course, it has to be.
In our context, public-private partnerships have been some of the most vulnerable to accusations of corruption, right?
Yes, it has to be there. So in fact, we are at the point now, as I said in my proposal to the Prime Minister's committee, we are at the point now where the regulation should have been finalized by now. And we are now in a position to put this law in place now. And as I always say, we should never let a good crisis go to waste. This is undoubtedly a crisis. Undoubtedly, there will be waste. Let's not waste this one. Let's look the ball in the eye and hit it for 6. Let's finish the procurement regulation and put our country on the right track for once, as Stevie Wonder say, for once in our life. Let's do it.
For once in our life.
Okay? Let's do it. Okay?
Yeah, sing, yeah, Anya? We're singing in this show. Wow. Yeah, that was great. That was such an important point you made at the end there as well, because a larger question that's going on all over the world is, yes, we're in the midst of a crisis.
Yes.
We can go one of 2 ways. You know, governments can accumulate and aggress more power onto themselves and, you know, at the expense of citizens' rights. But then there's a whole other movement, which you have just captured so you know, eloquently in the context of the public procurement fight. You're saying, yes, we're in the midst of a crisis. Yes, it can be used to go one way. Let us, as civil society and professionals in in the country use it as an
Yes.
opportunity to reset in the right direction with the public.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is pretty awesome. One final point. This is just a point in
Sure.
my craw that
Go on.
I raised with my colleague in public procurement, Professor Chris Eukins. Then I raised it with another colleague in public procurement with Magda Theodate, and I'm going to raise with you as well.
Go on.
What do you think of price gouging in the context of COVID-19 procurement of PPE and emergency and all of that? Because Chris Eukins was of the view that going after price gougers right now is inimical to the interests of the public. And in fact, it would chase suppliers away, and we should not be focusing on price gouging. I think the word he used was it's stupid to do so. And then Magna came and gave quite a different view that, no, we have to do what we can in the context of an emergency situation to ensure that citizens' rights are still being protected. We don't just give over everything to the market arrangements. And also made the very important point, I think, that price gouging is not just a little increase in price because it's a difficult situation to get stuff, but it is 100, 200, 300, 400%, sometimes 1,000% in things. So what is your view as someone who has been in this field of public procurement for, close to 2 decades?
I think that price gouging is wrong, but this is actually a very philosophical question, Margaret, because if the society that we are existing in is a capitalist one, where we worship and we enshrine the profit motive, and a man does what he can once he don't break the law, and a businessman is a businessman, and it's demand and supply and so on, you could end up with a situation where somebody could charge. I could tell you, I could give 2 examples without calling the names of the people. There are situations we have been in this country, and I'm talking about my firm, in the last 6 weeks, where, for example, there was a fellow we used to buy bathroom supplies from, hand towels and soap, hand soap and so for our 3 offices. When the situation started to take the country by the throat, we tried to acquire hand sanitizer because the staff were concerned and customers were concerned. This is about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And all the shops were sold out. Remember what that was going on with toilet paper and so, right?
Yeah, man.
So we contacted the guy, and the guy was like, Mr. Raymond, listen, we've done business for a long time, and you all a purchase order and a check, and I don't want any, I want cash. First of all, I want cash. I'm not dealing with any purchase order and check and all of that. I know you're anything, but you have to bring cash. And secondly, I'll sell you, and he was selling, he's a fellow who graduated in chemistry from UB, he makes these things. He was selling us huge containers of the thing, but like 3 times the price. And it's like, either they come fit now, or it'll all be gone in the morning. So I just went to the bank, got the money, gave it to my driver, and I got a receipt. I don't think any tax dodging is going on. But price gouging is actually happening right inside of here. Okay, and I also went through a similar situation about a week ago with some masks that we were buying for the office because we're looking at a reopening in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where the fella selling the masks, luckily for him, had just brought a container of masks and surgical stuff in. And he made us understand, he's a fellow we've done business with for years, he made us understand that, listen, if you don't come and get these masks cash, like in the morning, middlemen are buying these to sell them onto the ministry. So we were getting our masks for $6, but they're selling them onto the government for $13 and $15. But Raymond and Pierre got ours for $6. So even at a level inside of here, a tiny country like Trinidad and Tobago that's this big, where we don't make any of these things. Well, the fellow making the hand sanitizer, he makes it. He's a chemistry graduate. He puts things together and makes it. It's happening. So I don't think it's a very good thing. I think it's inimical. And ultimately, if one sets the profit motive to decide and places it in the balance, I believe it will be found one thing. If the dominant question is one of our collective health and safety, yes? Collective health and safety is not compatible with an immeasurable profit motive that is sanctified in law. Okay, that's my position, Margaret. Hopefully that explains a little bit. So I have encountered it twice in the last 6 weeks where fellas just say, bring money, I don't want any check. Bring cash in. It's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. what you just described, I think that actually deserves another conversation as well. Having collective health and how it's not compatible with current capitalistic and profit-making patterns that we've created over centuries almost. I think that definitely deserves, I mean, we will have to create new concepts. If we want to do some beneficial things, and if we want to change how we deal with all these supplies and how we create demand on the market and how we actually put the price on the value, the objects that we are constantly selling and transacting with, that demands that we create new, completely new concepts that are not only going to be based on what the value underneath is. So what were perhaps all the things that people needed to collect so that they create new products, but also what is the social impact behind it, what is going to be this on the long term, how it's going to be, you know, impacting different domains of our lives almost. And once you put them all together and create a new mesh of it, I think there's the reputation comes in place. What part did I play in the politics, or how did I engage in the lawmaking process? How did I engage in the whole process of creating these objects or whatever we're trading now with? Yeah, I mean, the collective health system is just one part that we are going to be creating in the new state that we want to form. This does demand, in a way, new states to be built bottom up. If we want to have collective health system in place, then we need to change not only the health system, but also the education, possibly the market itself. How do we as individuals engage in that market? How is the whole production taking place? The supply chains need to be amended. It's a whole complex system that we're constantly addressing, Margaret. It really is about the relationships and how the transactions are being built, not only the production itself and who puts the price on it, and then how the price gouging is actually taking place. Wow, I would love to dig deeper into the collective health system too. I mean, there's plenty of things that we should address and that we have to talk about together with democracy, together with a lot of philosophical aspects of it. Also, like maybe even the digital assets that we will have to create. I mean, the supply chain needs to be kind of reformed just due to the technical tools that we are using or are capable of using. How do we merge these two things together? On one side, we have the laws and we have the actions that we are taking. On the other side, we clearly see that the data can be used much better than it is being used today. And this can help us create better systems. How we're going to transform the health system is probably going to be partially also depending on the digitalization of all our systems. I would love to talk with you about it. I mean, there's the whole thing called token engineering that I would like to introduce you to and talk about it with you. I mean, this has been amazing.
Look at the rabbit hole that Afra Raymond has led us down in this conversation.
Let me say something else, please, because we're now getting to a fertile memory. I spent a lot of my time studying the whole Atlantic slave trade and the plantation and the African tragedy. And one of the things I remember from my readings about the plantation, and this is actually something I'm going to dredge something up and place it here for us to see that a lot of times in history, it's not the first time. There was a moment when the plantations had been established in the so-called New World, Latin America, the Caribbean, and in the southern states of America. Tobacco, sugar, cotton, coffee, cocoa. When the plantations have been established, that they were bringing across, they were capturing and bringing across enslaved Africans from West Africa and so on to work the plantations. And the planters actually hired an economist to work this out. Here what the question was. Does it make more sense to actually, because there was a high death rate among the workers, the brutality, the hard work, the whippings, whatever, the nutrition, the diseases, malaria, whatever. Does it make sense to improve the standard of living of the enslaved Africans so we can get another 10 years out of them? It would cost us, it's a cost-benefit analysis, it would cost us this much money to get another 10 years out of these people on average. Or do we just keep them at a subsistence level and bring fresh ones? That calculation was actually done during the period of the triangle of trade, the plantations, the system. And the result of that economist, and I forget who it was now, my head was in another space of this conversation. The result of that series of calculations and algebra and whatever you call it, was that it actually made more sense to give the Africans no more land, no more clothes, no more medicine, no more food. Just work them to death and bring fresh ones. That's actually a calculation that took place in this region as part of the successful, bright people of the day. Because as I always say, Nazism and the plantation system and imperialism and so on, the brightest people of the day designed and built and ran those systems. So brightness itself is not a token of moral fidelity or ethical standards. So the plantation example is very much touching me when I think through this, because those sorts of calculations that I'm alluding to, it may seem like I'm reaching back to the mists of time. Those sorts of calculations that I'm alluding to are being conducted now by our leaders. Do we reopen?
That's right.
So who's really greater? Is it old people? Or is it black people? Like in England, they say 4.5 times more likely to be a black person. Remember that, Margaret?
Yes.
Correct? So that same algebra, where it seems like I'm reaching back 300 years, that same set of equations is being worked out now.
It's like humanity.
The history repeat.
Yeah, the humanity of
Very
some
interesting.
people. Humanity of some people is always being tallied against economic well-being and productivity and growth. You follow what I'm saying? There's that.
Absolutely.
Always.
So I just brought that in to say that.
That is, yeah.
And I'm telling you, that's a calculation Trump and them making when they say they should reopen. And it's a serious thing, because I know I am feeling strained. We have carried our staff for a while. I am feeling strained, and I know other people are feeling strained. But I can tell you all, other people have not done that. There are large companies in Trinidad and Tobago, and if you look it up, you would see them, that have actually declared from the 1st of April they're not paying anybody. Large companies, Hilton, for example, actually said we're not paying anybody for the 1st of April. Just give one name. Wow. And there are many companies, many times the size of my company, that have literally just closed their doors and switched the lights off. And that's it. Okay? And some of us, and I come to our company as one of those, have tried to keep up our commitments with our staff and pay salaries of 1 month, pay salaries of 2 months, pay half a salary for the next month, and keep some sort of structure in place so we can reopen with a semblance of a team able to do our work going forward. But that algebra I'm referring to, when I went back to the Atlantic slave trade, is a real thing that took place in history, and same thing going on
again.
That's the modern type of slavery.
Equivalent, yeah. So it's a euphemism.
I mean, the services that we're now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the whole system, the education, starting with the education, and then how we go into practice, and how we become slaves of the corporation and the current system, it's just here existing and lingering on. And crises like that really do give the opportunity to kind of change something. And perhaps we now have the opportunity to really work it out. How can we sustain our systems without having this modern slavery in place? How can we really not really build just on the equality, but make the lives better?
Yeah.
You know what this?
It's yeah, go on, Margaret.
You know, this conversation kind of is making me reflect back to Anya in particular. I'm reaching out to here, a discussion we were having on, because this thing about looking at history and pulling out the patterns and seeing how the patterns are playing out over and over. And the point that you started to articulate about colonialism. And when, you know, colonialism was being, you know, that was the thing all over the world. Yes. And citizens within colonial states during, while it was happening, had to begin to make sense of themselves, the identity as a citizen in a colony in relation to the globe. And then there was this transition where that identity of the so-called colonized shifted to recognize this, and sorry, we should be an independent state.
Yes.
And Anya was making an analogy between that and the space that we're in right now, where we are also questioning ourselves, our identity now at a nation state level as citizens of a state, recognizing, wait, there is more of a relationship that we have as a citizen of a globe. There's a transition taking place here right now. We're in the middle of it. And it is because we are now understanding, whether it is through the globalization and the free movement of capital and corporations all over the world, and FANG having our data at these transnational levels, and we are able to operate and have this communication. The UK, I'm in the UK, Anya's in Slovenia, Afra, you in Trinidad and Tobago. We are operating globally, but our identity is still caged within this nation state. And it just, let me tell you, these conversations are so important, because I feel these conversations help us to make more of a sense of who we are, while we're in a space of what we'd call unknown unknowns. We do not have all the information. It's a complex system we are all a part of right now. And so it is only through these kinds of conversations and dialogues we can connect and make sense with each other, and looking back at history. And I just think that we are in a moment of time right now with COVID where many of us, you have been one, Afra, Anya absolutely has been one in her work, I have been one in my work, where we've been seeing these things are happening globally, and we need to have some sort of overarching framework for the global interactions that are taking place. We said it before COVID. Now COVID has happened, and it is obvious. It's now made obvious to those who were hammering against it, to those who couldn't see because they were blinded by a neoliberal mindset. It's now being made obvious that we have to think of ourselves not as citizens only of Trinidad and Tobago, of UK and Slovenia, but as citizens of the globe, and what rule of law at a global level looks like. I mean, that just came from me, guys, based on just listening to your conversations here. Afra, I wish I could have more conversations like this with you all the time, because you advance my thinking every time we connect. You know, we haven't spoken a lot about COVID.
For a while. No, we haven't. Let me are we going to do the recovery team?
Go.
Because the recovery team, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago appointed a post-COVID-19 recovery team of 22 eminent citizens, public servants, experts, and so on. And the sort of purpose of the committee in outline was to design what they call a roadmap to recovery after COVID.
All right, that scene where it only had like 3 women on it, and like,
yes, that one.
Much men, yeah, and everybody was over
the rest
50.
Was men.
Everybody was over 50 or something.
Yes,
like that. Yeah. That one, yeah.
Now that committee is supposed to design a roadmap for us as a country coming out of COVID to deal with things like the economy and the society. That's what was said to us. And of course, there will be diverse perspectives on what should happen and to what extent this crisis should be used to reorder the system.
That's right.
Which is what we've been discussing among ourselves. But I had 2 points on the committee, one of which we already covered amply, which was the fact that the procurement law needs to be passed now. My first point on that committee was that, in fact, given that the slogan seems to be that we're all in this together, and I entirely agree with that. Given that that is a slogan in terms of the public health threat and the collective challenge, I don't believe that the work of that committee should proceed as other committees have proceeded in the past, where the work is secret. Because in the past, you have an issue of high public concern. You appoint a committee of notable and worthy people. The committee invites submissions and they hear evidence, and sometimes it's a commission of inquiry, and they think about it all, and they make a report, and the report goes into what we would euphemistically call, because this is a general audience, the report goes into the other place, which normally means a draw, or it's to be approved by cabinet, or sometimes it's in file 13, or sometimes they're waiting a legal opinion, or they're not ready to publish it yet. But generally, most of these reports conducted at public expense, supposedly on behalf of an issue of high public concern, slide into obscurity. And I said that should not be the case. the draft report, the interim report, the provisional report, the preliminary report, whatever phrase you use, that has to be published. And as we go along stage by stage, we publish the reports. We have the tools available to us now. We're in an IT age. Publish the work. Let citizens have a buy-in. Let us all have a say. I don't want to be a schoolboy sending my homework up to sir to be corrected. I want to be part of a participatory process in terms of reordering and remodeling and having that wide-ranging, unnecessary conversation about where we go from here.
Yeah.
That was my first point. And of course, I'm unhappy to say to you, closing off here now, I'm unhappy to say to you that the Prime Minister confirmed a few days after that they would not be publishing the report. And he said very clearly, he's a man known for plain speaking, no mistaking when he says something. He said very plainly, he was being asked in Parliament, that in fact, they're not publishing any preliminary anything, and they're going to get things from people and consider it. And when they finish with it and they've completed it, they will take it to Parliament for discussion, and then it will be published, which I consider to be entirely retrograde and not what is needed at this time. But it was said, there was a response. My name was never called, but it was responded to that we're not doing that.
It is like a very traditional approach and old school approach to public decision making. And right now,
true. That's not what's needed.
Yeah, we need a more participatory process. It takes a kind of leadership that could recognize that, Yeah.
It almost sounds that you're lacking some of the facilitation, because to some extent it sounded to me as if people are being a bit cowardish, being afraid of putting everything to the public because they know that the public can tear it apart if it's not ready yet. If it doesn't meet their interest, if it doesn't meet their expectations, stuff like that. But that can easily be tackled if you have the right PR in place, if you have the right strategy, if you have the right facilitation. But it does take a lot of time for people to understand that those are all the things that we don't have to be afraid of. We just have to very deeply understand what it is that we are afraid of in the first place.
And I
that's
think,
a shame though.
Yeah, and I think that, I know the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I have represented him for many years, and he is a friend, someone that I consider a friend. And I know for a fact that he is committed to good governance from the perspective as he sees it, from where he comes from. And without focusing on him, I think across all jurisdictions and leadership in modern representative democracies, there is this transformation that's taking place, and leaders are different points in that transformation, on that curve, and I think the role that you play, Afra, in Trinidad and Tobago is really helping to agitate and push our leaders up that curve for deeper participatory processes, to deepen our democracy and all of that. And so I encourage you to continue your work, because I know the Prime Minister, is open and will be listening. It takes time, I think, sometimes. It takes time in every society because there are multiple interests around leaders as well. Right? So let's see how it goes. So yeah, man. Anya, any other questions for Afra? We went where I didn't think we would have gone in this conversation, but you know what? Again, at the end of every conversation, I feel is the best conversation we've ever had. But without a doubt so far, this for me, the last one on India was like, oh, this is the best conversation. But this one is like, oh, I've taken notes from you, Afra.
Good.
Nice. I'm gonna be, yeah, definitely one of the clips we want to pull out is those books you've recommended. I'm gonna, and lots of things that you've said. But any last questions to Afra, Anya, and Afra, any closing statements you'd like to make? One of the questions we'd like to ask our experts that we're speaking to all over the world is, we're in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis. You can choose to answer any one of these three questions, or all, if you're so inclined. But the three questions are, what do you think, we're in the middle of a huge transformation, what do you think we need to either keep doing? What do you think we need to stop doing? What do you think we need to start doing? You can choose any one of those three and answer.
Okay, Anya.
Anya, any final questions?
Let
him think.
Desperately.
I have just one question basically, and that is, what is the best medium to reach out to you? Because I have a feeling that we're gonna speak more often. So I want to know.
I'm on all medium. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on email, afraraymond@gmail. And of course I have my own blog, afraraymond.net. You can contact me through there as well. The thing I would like to say that we keep doing, if I may, is that these platforms that we're using to communicate, the YouTube and the ones I just listed, Facebook, Twitter, Zoom, these sorts of things, we need to keep these platforms open and as available as possible. I am concerned because the other thing that we want to stop doing, I want to stop using the platforms to harvest information, to fatten the pockets, and to increase the income disparity, which is what we started off talking about, the information monarchy in the midst of a Republican tendency. And the other thing I would like us to start doing, I would like us to continue, I should say start, because it's one of my most painful realizations, is that we have a situation where you're pronounced illiteracy, what I call a financial and economic illiteracy. So people can understand quite advanced things spiritually and aesthetically and so on and so on. But the actual economical and financial things that are being, so in fact, because of the economic and financial illiteracy, somebody can come and bring absolute damaging rubbish to the public and still get elected, which takes us back to the democratic dilemma that Anya raised earlier about whether we have more or less democracy. So it's not just a question of misinformation, of somebody lying with like the Putin thing with the 2016 election and Hillary and all that stuff, where somebody will tell you a fish is an egg. But if you have a population that can't tell that a fish is a fish and an egg is an egg, you could tell them a fish is a fish and they'll still vote for it, when in fact they really meant to vote for an egg because you're dealing with economic and financial illiteracy. So I want to say that out there. In relation to that point, a final book I will mention to you is Treasure Islands. I mentioned it to you, Margaret, before.
I bought it
by a fellow called Nicholas Shaxson, Shaxson. And Nicholas Shaxson is associated with the Tax Justice Network out of the UK. And the equivalent in the States with a fellow called Raymond Baker is Global Financial Integrity out of Washington. But Treasure Islands is really, if there's one book to understand this whole thing about secrecy jurisdictions and tax evasion, Nicholas Shaxson is the man who wrote the book. And I urge anybody who's committed to social and economic justice, take a little time and read that book. You'll thank me.
Yeah. You know, I know we close in the conversation, but then you see every time you speak, you do this to me, you know. So I agree at that point on the lack of economic and financial literacy. I think also scientific literacy, not so much from an electoral standpoint, who we elect, but in terms of what we understand to be true. And in the context of this COVID, there's this video going around called Plandemic, right? If you get it, but YouTube is pulling it down, right?
Yes.
And I see these things, and I see things about 5G and all this sort of thing. And I'm sorry, I am, you know, people misunderstand me because they can't understand how I would say some things. I am very honest. My scientific literacy is low, right? And so that when I see these things, I get confused. Having the ability to unpack, well, is this true? Is what they're saying true? You know, requires a certain level, and it's about how do we think through our education system again, so that we don't have people qualifying that have deep, deep, deep knowledge in silos, right? It is something that I have been trying to address in my own life for decades, right? Deep knowledge in the law. And then having to recognize, wait, but there are all these interconnections. I need to learn about economics. I need to learn about the financial system, the global financial system. I need to understand now, in the last couple of years, my focus is on science, because I'm like, you know, I have to, if you want to, especially if you're thinking about the future of how we as societies transform, we have to really up our game. As multidisciplinary thinkers, you know, as God has gone off into a whole other thing again, because with the Industrial Revolution, that's why our education system was made this way.
Siloed. Yes.
Yeah, because we wanted to optimize every part, right? Yes. And now we've recognized that there's a huge deficiency in system level understanding, in system empathy, and you know, and so yeah, man.
I mean, I'll make it as a joke, because what you're saying is very profound and necessary, Margaret. And my joke is that, I'm a surveyor, I'm a chartered surveyor. I'm a fellow of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and I'm well qualified and experienced and so on. I don't have any friends who are surveyors. They're too boring. All of my friends are other people. I have friends who are artists and doctors and lawyers and chemists and activists and painters and playwrights. And I have a broad church of friends. And I don't think, if I think about the last 50 people who came to my house to visit and lime and eat and drink, I don't think any of them are surveyors. So I'll leave that there as a thought. Maybe if you hang around with less law. Anyway, I'll leave that there for now.
You're right. Maybe you're right. Because we have this Future Law Collaborative. We have over 106 now.
But some other people in there.
No, but we do
not
have
just lawyers.
We know we do have other people doing. So, but we want to, and we have met up.
Sure.
And we want to invite you to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll be coming at you.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much.
Meetings once a month. Okay?
Lovely.
Yes, Afra?
Lovely.
Let's get this yes on record. Yes. 107 people.
Here, digital signature.
Yeah. Digital signature. Boom.
Afra Raymond.
So that's it. Thank you.
Afra Raymond of afraraymond.net.
Thank you.
Blessings. This has been tremendous. Thank you.
Thanks for your invitation. Thank you, Anya. Good to meet you. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.